When Daniel told me he was feeling lost, I didn't question it. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, eyes heavy, voice low, like he was about to confess something sacred. "I need to find myself," he said. "I'm going on a spiritual retreat. No phone, no work, no distractions, just nature, yoga, healing." I blinked, confused but concerned. He looked tired, worn out, like the world had pushed too hard and he needed space to breathe. So I nodded. Because that's what love is, isn't it? Letting them go, hoping they come back whole. I helped him pack, folded his linen shirts, tucked his favorite incense into a side pocket, even slipped in a tiny notebook in case he wanted to journal. He kissed my forehead and promised to return lighter. I believed him. I believed every damn word. I texted his mom that weekend, told her he was off the grid, doing soul work. She said she was proud of him. I was too. At least, I thought I was. That was before everything cracked open. The house was quiet with him gone. I lit candles in the evening, played soft music, and sat with my thoughts. I wrote him long messages I knew he wouldn't read. Things like, "I hope you're finding your center," or "I miss your energy around the house." I even posted a picture of his packed bag with a heart emoji. Silly, I know, but it felt right at the time, like I was supporting something meaningful, like we were in this together. I remember standing by the kitchen window that first night, watching the incense swirl in the air like a dance I wasn't invited to. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. I kept thinking about Daniel somewhere deep in the forest, maybe meditating by a stream, maybe rediscovering himself under the stars. It was almost poetic, really. I even smiled once, imagining him in a yoga pose, all serious and spiritual. I wanted to believe in his healing as much as he seemed to believe in needing it. The truth is, we hadn't been perfect. There were cracks, quiet ones, the kind you don't notice until they start leaking at the worst times. Missed dinners, strange absences, that look he gave his phone when he thought I wasn't watching. But every couple has phases, right? I told myself he was just overwhelmed. Work had been brutal. He wasn't sleeping. And maybe, just maybe, this retreat was what he needed to return to me, to us, to the man I married. So I leaned into the idea. I journaled too, pages about our past, about what we'd fix when he came home. I even made a list titled "Ways to Reconnect" with little bullet points like "cook together" and "morning walks." I wanted him to feel safe when he came back, to feel wanted. It wasn't about me, I told myself. It was about his journey, his healing. I didn't realize, not then, that I was the only one taking it seriously. By Saturday night, I had started lighting a candle for him before bed. It felt symbolic somehow, like I was holding space while he found his way back. I even turned off my own phone for a few hours each day, just to mirror the quiet he was supposedly embracing. I told friends, when they asked, that he was off the grid. I made it sound brave. Like he was doing something noble, spiritual, even rare. And I meant it. I defended his absence like it was sacred. But underneath it all, I was waiting. Waiting for a text, a sign, a whisper from the universe that we were still connected. I didn't need much, just something small. The silence, though, kept growing, stretching across hours and meals and empty bedsheets. It started to feel less like peace and more like absence. But I kept ignoring that ache. I held on to the idea of him in some quiet forest, becoming better, becoming honest, becoming true. So when Sunday came, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, sat by the window with my journal in my lap, and told myself this was good. This was necessary. I took a deep breath and turned the page to write him another letter he'd never read, when my phone buzzed. Just once. But that sound would split everything in half. It was just one message, a tiny vibration, A single notification, like the universe had finally spoken. I picked up my phone expecting, I don't know, maybe a missed call from Daniel, maybe a power outage at the retreat, maybe nothing at all. But it wasn't nothing. It was a message from Marcella, a family friend who never texted unless it was someone's birthday or a baby was born. Her words came fast, too fast. Didn't Daniel say he was at a retreat? Weird. We saw him yesterday, in Buzios, 5-star resort, with a woman. I stared at the screen. The words didn't register at first. I actually laughed, one of those dry, confused, automatic laughs. Then I saw the photo. Blurry, yes, but clear enough. Daniel. Swim trunks. A cocktail in one hand, the other casually resting on the leg of a tall brunette in a green bikini. They were lounging poolside, looking like a damn travel ad. And just behind them, the resort's logo carved into white stone. Not a forest, not a meditation tent, no yoga mats, just sun, alcohol, and skin. My hand didn't shake. That's what I remember most. I thought it would, but it didn't. I just sat there, staring. My tea had gone cold. The incense on the windowsill was still burning, leaving a faint trail in the air like some sick joke. My husband, the man supposedly detoxing from distraction, was sipping caipirinhas with another woman while I was lighting candles for his healing. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got quiet. The kind of quiet that feels louder than anything else. I zoomed in on the photo. His smile wasn't just relaxed, it was intimate, familiar. Like he'd smiled that way 1,000 times with her. The woman beside him had her hand resting on his chest, fingers tracing that spot just above his heart. That used to be mine. That lazy kind of touch, the one you only do when you feel safe with someone. I tried to remember the last time I touched him like that, or the last time he let me. My mind came up empty, like trying to remember the warmth of a room you haven't been in for years. And still, I didn't cry. I just felt stripped. Like someone had walked into my home and taken something that couldn't be replaced. He hadn't just lied about where he was. He'd made me complicit. I was out here playing the supportive wife, telling people he was soul-searching, when really he was lounging with someone half my age in a luxury villa. The betrayal wasn't just about the woman. It was about the performance, the manipulation, the ease with which he disappeared into the lie. I sat in silence for a long time. Then I closed the photo, set the phone down, and looked around the room. The blanket on the couch, the cup of pens he always ignored, the framed photo of us from last year's anniversary dinner. It all felt staged now, like props in a play I didn't realize I was acting in, but I wasn't going to sit in that scene anymore. I stood up, not to cry, not to fall apart, to plan. Because if he thought he could find himself, he had no idea what I was about to uncover. I went to the bedroom and opened his drawer, the one I rarely touched because it felt private, sacred in a way. It was nearly empty. He hadn't even packed like someone going on a spiritual retreat. It was vacation wear, linen shirts, cologne, that ridiculous gold watch he only wore when he wanted to feel expensive. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the space where his things used to be, and it hit me. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. He'd rehearsed this, the speech, the bags, the silence. I'd been played. I thought about calling him, just once, just to ask. Why? But what would he say? That he needed clarity? That the woman in the photo helped him breathe? No. I wouldn't give him that power. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing he got to me. If he had built an illusion to run off and find himself, then I would let him live in it, at least for now. But not without consequences. I wasn't going to chase him. I was going to walk right into his fantasy and shatter it from the inside. So I picked up my phone, opened a new tab, and typed in the name of the resort. It was easy to find. 5 stars, oceanfront, all-inclusive. Of course. I didn't hesitate. I booked a private villa under a different last name, calm and cold as ice. If he wanted a secret life, I could play that game too. But the ending? That would be mine to write. The drive to Buzios was long, but my mind was louder than the engine. I didn't play music. I needed the silence, needed to feel every mile between the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. No trembling, no second guessing. I had packed light, just a flowy dress, sunglasses, and a rage so quiet it almost felt graceful. As the coastline came into view, I could see exactly why he chose this place. It was paradise. And now, it was my stage. I checked in just before sunset. The woman at the front desk smiled too brightly, tapping away at her keyboard. "Welcome back," she said without looking up. Then, glancing at the name on the reservation, different from his, she hesitated. "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought, never mind." Her voice softened. "You and your husband must love this place. He's been a regular lately." I smiled. "Not the kind that reaches your eyes." "I'm just here for clarity," I replied, and she handed me the key. Room 11. Close enough to watch without being seen. The villa was beautiful. White curtains swayed with the sea breeze, and the view from the balcony stretched all the way to the restaurant patio. I sat there for hours that first night, watching the rhythm of the place. Lovers laughing, waiters weaving between tables. And then, him, Daniel. Tanned, relaxed, holding a drink in one hand and her in the other. They looked like they belonged in a honeymoon brochure. But the thing about brochures is, they never show you what happens after the photos fade. I watched them like it was a ritual. Breakfast at the terrace around 9, pool by 10, cocktails at noon. Every move predictable, rehearsed, almost boring in its routine. He wasn't a man searching for peace. He was a man enjoying comfort. And she? She floated beside him like an accessory, all giggles and tan lines and cheap perfume that probably thought it smelled like coconut but really smelled like a lie. I studied them with the kind of calm only betrayal can sharpen. In between watching, I made notes. Not just mental ones. I wrote in the same journal I'd once used to send him love. Now it held schedules, patterns, details, who spoke to who, what they ordered, when he touched her. I wasn't collecting proof. I wasn't planning a confrontation. Not yet. This was about understanding the world he'd created for himself, the fantasy he chose over the life we built. And the more I watched, the more obvious it became. He was comfortable lying. Effortlessly comfortable. The staff didn't even blink when they walked in together. No second glances, no discomfort. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a while. Long enough that the deception wasn't just mine to carry, it was part of the wallpaper now. And I think that's when the anger turned sharp. Cold. Because I realized he hadn't just lied to me. He'd erased me, replaced me, smiled through it. But if he thought he'd written the ending to this story, he was about to find out I had the pen. That evening, I walked the grounds like I belonged there. No hat, no sunglasses, just my face, bare and unapologetic. I wasn't hiding. I wanted to be seen, but not yet by him. I passed couples holding hands, heard the sound of clinking glasses, the soft splash of the infinity pool. The place was drenched in luxury and pretense, and I fit right in, at least on the surface. But beneath it all, I was humming with purpose. Every step was calculated. Every glance, strategic. I was the storm just before the wind shifts. At one point, I passed close enough to hear his laugh. Not the polite kind. The real one, deep and careless. I froze for a second. Not out of sadness, but out of recognition. That laugh used to belong to our Saturday mornings, our road trips, our lazy Sunday afternoons in bed. And now it was hers. This stranger who probably thought she was special. And maybe she was. Special enough to be lied to, too. Because if he did it to me, he'd do it to her. I knew that now. But I wasn't here for her. I returned to my room, drew a bath, and poured a glass of wine. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Hair tied back, eyes steady, face softer than I expected. I looked. Free. Maybe for the first time in a long time. The kind of free that only comes when you know something they don't. When you're about to take the truth and drop it into the middle of someone's carefully constructed lie. And that moment? It was closer than he could ever imagine. I chose sunset on purpose. There's something cinematic about golden hour, the way it softens everything except the truth. I wore white, not for symbolism, not for drama, just because I knew it would catch the light and their attention. I waited until they were seated at their favorite table, the one closest to the water. I watched him toast her with that smug little grin, watched her tilt her head like she was the prize. And then I walked. Every step across that terrace felt electric. Heads turned, some out of curiosity, others sensing tension before they even saw my face. But I didn't care about them. My eyes were locked on him, and when I reached their table, I didn't hesitate. I pulled out the third chair, slowly, deliberately, and sat down. The air shifted. I could feel it. Conversations at nearby tables went quiet. The only sound left was the waves and his breathing. His hand froze midair. The fork dropped. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw panic fight to hide behind charm. "Camilla?" he said, like I was the one out of place. I tilted my head, calm as ever. "Oh, you found yourself all right," I said, my voice steady. "And I found your lies." Then I reached into my purse and took off my wedding ring. No speech, no drama. Just placed it between their untouched chocolate mousse and the resort's overpriced champagne. He opened his mouth, probably to lie, but nothing came out. Just air. Just guilt, thick and visible, like steam rising off his skin. She glanced between us, confused, like she was still trying to piece together whether this was a prank or a performance. I leaned in slightly, meeting her gaze, not with anger, but with clarity. "He told me you were his yoga instructor," I said, my voice like velvet laced with knives. I didn't realize downward dog had such a literal meaning. She blinked. The color drained from her face just as fast as it had lit up when he brought the champagne. For a second, no one moved. Then I reached for the ring one last time, slid it toward her side of the table. "You can keep that," I said. "He's good at making things look pretty. Not so good at keeping them real." Around us, people pretended not to watch, but they were frozen in place. Spoons suspended midair. Conversations paused like a skipped heartbeat. Daniel finally found his voice. "Camilla, this isn't what it looks like," he started, like a man desperately clinging to the last page of a crumbling script. But I was already standing. "You're right," I said. "It's worse." I straightened my shoulders, fixed my dress, and gave them both one last look. Not with rage, but with something far more dangerous. Indifference. He didn't deserve fury. He deserved to be small in a place he thought he ruled. As I turned to walk away, I didn't rush. I wanted him to feel every step. Every breath of distance growing between us. I passed the bar, where a couple clapped softly. I didn't acknowledge it. This wasn't a performance. It was closure. I felt tall, whole, like shedding his lies had made room for my spine to straighten again. And behind me, I didn't hear footsteps. He didn't follow. He just sat there, probably choking on the silence he'd created. I walked straight through the lobby, past the same receptionist who'd welcomed me with a cheerful lie. This time she avoided my eyes. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't. It didn't matter. I reached my villa, packed slowly, methodically. No music, no tears. I didn't need to rush. The storm had already passed. And in its wake, I felt strangely calm. Not healed, not yet, but clear. Like the moment after a deep exhale, when the air finally feels clean again. I stood on the balcony one last time, watching the sun melt into the sea. Same view he had, only I saw it differently now. Not as a romantic backdrop, but as proof of endings, of truth, of beauty that doesn't require an audience. I didn't come here to confront him. I came to reclaim something he didn't even know he'd taken. Me. And tomorrow, I'd return home. But not to wait, not to beg, to begin again, on my terms. I checked out just after sunrise. No fanfare, no backward glance. Just handed over the key, nodded politely, and walked out lighter than I'd felt in years. The air was different that morning. Warmer, quieter. Or maybe it was just me. I didn't rush the drive back. I let the wind roll through the windows, let it carry away whatever was left of the version of me that waited, hoped, forgave. That version died somewhere between the first lie and the last cocktail. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't sit in the silence like I used to. I went straight to our closet, his side, and started pulling things down. Shirts he never folded. Shoes he only wore to impress. That ridiculous meditation bowl he bought online. I packed it all neatly, almost tenderly. Not out of love, out of finality. I placed the suitcases in the hallway and topped them with a note. Namaste your way out of my life. Simple, honest, sharp enough to leave a mark. I changed the locks that same afternoon. Called the locksmith, made small talk while he worked. Told him I'd just come back from a trip. He smiled and said, "Good for you." And you know what? It really was. I blocked Daniel's number, deleted our shared playlists, removed his name from the Wi-Fi. Every little step felt like sweeping out the ashes of something that was never meant to survive the fire. The house felt different without his things. Bigger, somehow. Not in size, but in air, in energy. It was like the walls had been waiting to exhale too. I opened the windows, let the sunlight in, rearranged the living room just because I could. And then, I did something small that felt enormous. I made coffee. Just for me. 1 cup, not 2. No wondering how he takes his. No second mug waiting on the counter like a ghost. Just silence and the soft hum of something new beginning. Later that week, I signed the divorce papers. No drama, no begging. Just a clear, intentional signature. The lawyer asked if I wanted to send a formal notice. I said no. He'd get the message when the key didn't work, the Wi-Fi name was gone, and his shirts were wrinkling in a hallway he couldn't enter. Let him figure it out. Let him sit in his own confusion for once. He wanted space? He could have all of it, just not mine. Not anymore. And then, one evening, I went to a yoga class. A real one. Nothing fancy. Just a small studio down the street where no one knew my story. The instructor had a soft voice, and the room smelled like eucalyptus and calm. I rolled out a mat, closed my eyes, and breathed. Not to escape. Not to find anyone. Just to feel my body again. My breath. Myself. And somewhere between child's pose and savasana, I smiled. For real this time. Because I didn't need to find myself. I just needed to remember I'd never been lost. There's something sacred about beginning again. Not with a bang, not with some dramatic flourish, but with small, steady choices. I started saying yes to things I used to put off. Dinner with friends. Walks at dusk. Books that didn't center around fixing a marriage. I bought new sheets, rearranged my dresser, hung up a photo of myself from years ago, smiling, free, before I ever thought I needed someone else to feel complete. I wasn't reclaiming anything. I was evolving. People started asking questions, of course, some gentle, some nosy. I answered what I wanted and left the rest alone. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not anymore. And as for Daniel, I never heard his voice again. Never saw him at the door, never got the grand apology. And I was okay with that, because I didn't need closure. I became it. Every day I didn't look back. Every morning I woke up alone but not lonely. That was the real peace he claimed to be searching for. So no, I didn't go on a retreat. I didn't detox or chant mantras in a forest. I didn't find myself in silence or prayer. I found myself in the mirror, in motion, in laughter I didn't fake, and nights I didn't dread. He left to find himself, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But me? I found everything he lost the moment he lied, and I'm never handing it back.
The message came on a Tuesday morning. Dinner at Rosetta's, 6:30 p.m. Big news to share. My brother sent it to our family chat group, where I'm usually forgotten. The word big stood out to me. It felt important, like they really wanted me there. I went because, despite everything, they're still my family. Right? I remember driving to the restaurant that evening. The sun was setting, making long shadows across the parking lot. I took a deep breath before getting out of my car. I straightened my firefighter uniform. I hadn't had time to change. My shift ran late, and I rushed over without eating anything. Part of me was excited. Maybe things were changing. Maybe this time I'd be included. When I walked into the restaurant, I could already hear laughter. I turned a corner into the private room and stopped short. There they all were, my brother Jake smiling and talking loudly, my mom Lisa nodding along, my dad Frank checking his phone, and my older sister Rachel in the center of it all, glowing like always. Even my grandmother Martha was there, sitting quietly at the end of the table. They were all there, except no one had saved me a seat. But that wasn't what hit me first. My eyes landed on a big blue banner stretched across the back wall. Congratulations to our real son. Bold letters, sparkling and loud. It felt like a slap. I stood there trying to understand. No one seemed surprised to see me. No one apologized. My mom just raised her glass and said, "Oh good, you made it. We've already started." Rachel looked me up and down and smirked. "Couldn't change out of your work clothes." I nodded stiffly and forced a smile. Got off work late. There was a strange silence after that. Not awkward, but comfortable for them. Like I was the guest, not their son. Like this celebration wasn't for me at all. A waiter brought over a spare chair. No one moved to make room. I sat there quietly, trying to make myself smaller. That's when my mom lifted her glass again. To Jake, she said with a proud smile, "Our real son. We finally have something to celebrate." Everyone clinked glasses except me. I stared at the tablecloth, wondering if I'd heard wrong. Real son. Jake laughed. "I'll explain," he said, like he was telling a joke. He leaned in excitedly. "I did one of those DNA tests. Turns out I'm not adopted. I'm actually 100% mom and dad's biological child. They thought they had me through adoption, but I'm genetically theirs." People cheered like it was a birthday party. Dad wiped away a tear. Mom put her hand over her heart. I tried to keep my voice steady. "So what does that mean about me?" The table got quiet for a second. Then Lisa gave a small shrug. "Well, honey, you were from the same adoption agency. It was complicated. We were young. Mixed-ups happen." Laughter rose again, louder this time. I sat there feeling cold in a room full of warmth that wasn't meant for me. Then something unexpected happened. The waiter came back. He walked straight to me, not anyone else, and handed me a small sealed envelope. "The owner asked me to give this to you," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look. I stared at the envelope. My name, Daniel, was handwritten on the front. Just my name. In that moment, everything shifted. I wasn't born into this family, at least not in the normal way. Growing up, no one ever said anything different. My parents, Lisa and Frank, always seemed distant, but they called me their son. They gave me their last name. I called them Mom and Dad. They fed me, clothed me, sent me to school. From the outside, we looked like any regular middle-class family. But inside our house, something was always missing. Something I could never name out loud. Jake, my younger brother, was everything they wanted. From when he could first walk, he was the center of every conversation, every holiday, every picture on the wall. He was their golden boy. Athletic, charming, got good grades without trying. And me? I was the one who remembered to take out the trash. The one who sat in the back seat during road trips so Jake could have the window. The one who always bought my own birthday cake because Mom ran out of time. I don't remember the last time either of them said they were proud of me. Not when I graduated top of my class. Not when I saved a family from a burning apartment. Not even when I was honored by the fire department for bravery. But I didn't complain. I thought maybe that's just how families worked. Maybe love didn't always look like hugs or praise. Maybe being responsible meant you didn't get attention. Despite all the little hurts, I stayed close. I called on birthdays. I drove them to appointments. I showed up at Christmas with gifts even when no one thought to get me anything. I never missed a family dinner because deep down, I kept hoping this time would be different. That's why when the message came about dinner at Rosetta's, I told myself, maybe they're finally going to see me. Maybe this big news was something we could all share. Maybe I'd finally be part of the celebration, not just watching from the side. I was tired that day, physically and emotionally. 12 hours fighting a warehouse fire. One person I couldn't save. But I didn't cancel. I didn't want to be the one who didn't show up. I'd gotten used to being reliable, even when it hurt. I remember putting on fresh deodorant in my locker, trying to look presentable. I told myself, don't overthink it. Go in, smile. Maybe this time will be different. But nothing could have prepared me for that banner. Congrats to our real son. It wasn't just a party. It was a statement. A line drawn in glitter between who belonged and who didn't. And the way they looked at me when I asked what it meant about me, like I was making things uncomfortable, like I was overreacting to something they thought was harmless. It told me everything I needed to know. Still, I didn't leave right away. I sat in that chair with my hands in my lap and my heart beating too fast. I waited for anyone, to notice the pain on my face. To ask if I was okay. No one did. And then the envelope came. The waiter placed it down gently, like it was something important. The outside was simple, just my name in black ink. Daniel. I hadn't seen my name written like that in years. Not in handwriting. Not like it mattered. That's when I knew this wasn't part of their plan. This wasn't something they arranged. This was something different. Someone knew I'd need this moment, that I'd need the truth. And somehow they'd made sure it found me. My hands shook as I picked it up. I didn't know yet, but what was inside that envelope would change everything I thought I knew. Not just about that dinner, but about my entire life. I didn't open it right away. I held it like something fragile that could either save me or break me completely. The paper was thick, almost old-fashioned. The handwriting was sharp and careful. Someone had taken their time. Someone had wanted this to reach me. I couldn't open it there, not while I was surrounded by people pretending I didn't exist. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and looked up. The conversation had moved on without me. Jake was now talking about his DNA test like it was the most exciting story ever told. I honestly just did it for fun, he said, swirling his wine glass. But when I got the results, I was shocked. Apparently, I'm 100% their biological child. No adoption, no mix-up. Just me, the real deal. Everyone laughed again. Even Grandma Martha nodded, though I noticed she wasn't smiling with her eyes. I finally found my voice and asked quietly, so what does that mean about me? For a second, no one said anything. Dad looked at the wall like he was trying to remember a dentist appointment. Mom shifted in her seat and gave a practiced smile. Well, she said, we used the adoption agency back then. They didn't tell you much in those days. We didn't ask too many questions. Jake interrupted. Basically, you were the mix-up. I'm theirs, Daniel. You might be someone else's entirely. He said it with a laugh, like he was telling me I'd ordered the wrong drink. Everyone chuckled along. Except me. I wanted to leave. I wanted to scream. But I sat there completely still, like my body wasn't connected to the room anymore. Mom reached across the table to pour more water. It doesn't really change anything, though, she added casually. You're still family. Still family, the way someone says about an old neighbor or the dog they gave away years ago. I felt my throat tighten, my heart pounding. Not fast, but heavy, like it was pulling the rest of me down. No one apologized. No one realized that what they just revealed wasn't a quirky surprise. It was my entire identity being thrown away like a joke. I wasn't just the less favored son. I was the one who didn't even belong. That banner made it clear, our real son. Not both sons. Not our family. Just one. One real son. And I wasn't him. Jake was loving every second. He pulled out his phone and started showing pictures of his DNA results like it proved he'd won a prize. My parents leaned in, amazed, hanging on every word. I sat there invisible, shrinking with every sip of my untouched water. At one point, Jake looked at me and said, "Honestly, this explains a lot. You've always been different." He didn't mean it kindly. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from work. "Station 12 needs backup tomorrow. Can you cover?" Even my job treated me with more respect than my own family. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stood up. "I'm going to step outside for some air," I said. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was okay. My chair scraped softly against the floor, and their conversation continued without missing a beat. I stepped into the cool night air, pulled the envelope from my jacket, and stared at it under the streetlight. I was shaking, not just from the cold, but from realizing I had never truly been part of that table. Not when I was 5, not when I was 15, not tonight. And somewhere inside this envelope, I had a feeling I was about to find out why. I stood outside that restaurant feeling like the ground wasn't solid anymore. The laughter from inside kept floating through the window. The clinking of glasses, familiar voices, stories told for the 100th time. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just another family dinner. But something had broken open inside me, and all I could hear was the sound of paper unfolding in my hands. The envelope was warm from how long I'd held it. My name, Daniel, still staring back at me like it belonged to someone else. For a second, I thought about not reading it. Maybe it would be easier to walk away and just live with not knowing. But I'd spent most of my life doing that, quietly accepting things that didn't make sense, excusing the cold looks, pretending their love was enough. I was done pretending. I tore open the seal. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The handwriting stopped me cold, slanted, careful print. Familiar in a way I couldn't place at first. Then it hit me, Grandma Martha. I hadn't seen her handwriting since I was a child, back when she used to mail me birthday cards with $5 bills tucked inside. She'd stopped years ago, or maybe someone had made her stop. I opened the letter. "Daniel, if you're reading this, it means they finally told you. Or maybe they told you just enough to hurt you, not enough to explain. I've waited years for this moment. There's something I've needed to say for a long time, but I was asked not to. I kept that promise until now. You were never supposed to end up with them. Your father, your real father, was my son, Michael. He died in a house fire when you were just a baby. He was a firefighter, just like you chose to become. No one talks about him anymore. They buried his memory to protect themselves, not you." I felt my knees give out. I sat down on the stone bench near the sidewalk. The letter trembled in my hands. Michael. My father had a name I'd never heard, a name they'd never once spoken. After the fire, Lisa stepped in. She offered to take you in. She said it was the only way to keep you safe and cared for. At the time, I believed her. She was my daughter-in-law. I wanted to trust her. But the truth is, she didn't take you out of love. She took you out of guilt and obligation. She didn't want to raise her husband's brother's child. She wanted to move on. I tried, Daniel. I tried to keep you close. But Lisa didn't want me involved. She said I confused things. She said it was better for you if you just moved forward. I remembered how Grandma Martha used to pull me aside at family gatherings and whisper things like, "You've got courage like your father, or you have his eyes, you know." I thought she meant Frank. Now I knew she hadn't. I kept Michael's things. Letters, photos, medals. I have one of him holding you at the hospital, smiling so wide. You were his world. You still are. Come see me tonight. I'm still here. I'll tell you everything. Love, Grandma Martha. The letter slipped from my fingers, landing softly in my lap. My chest felt like it was caving in and expanding all at once. Every part of me that had been waiting to be chosen, to be included, to be seen, suddenly felt irrelevant. I didn't want to be seen by them anymore. I didn't need to be. I looked up at the restaurant window, my family, the people I thought were mine. were still talking, still celebrating, still living in the center of their own story where I had never truly belonged. They hadn't lost anything tonight, but I had found something. A thread of truth. A name. A father. A grandmother who had never given up on me. A family I had never been told about. One that might have actually loved me the way I'd always hoped for. I stood up. This time I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to my car, hands steady now. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't owe them that. They had 28 years to tell me the truth, and they chose silence. But someone else had chosen love, and she was waiting for me. The drive to Grandma Martha's house felt longer than it was. Only 15 minutes from the restaurant, but every red light felt endless. My fingers gripped the steering wheel too tight. My thoughts raced faster than my heart. I was shaking, not from fear, but from the pull of something I had never felt before. Truth. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there. I just knew I had to go. When I pulled into the driveway, her porch light was already on. She was sitting on the front steps, just like when I was little. Back then, I'd sit beside her and ask questions about everything. I thought of her as the only adult who really listened to me. Now I knew why. She stood up slowly when she saw me. No words at first. She just opened her arms, and I walked into them like I was coming home. She held me longer than I expected. Longer than anyone had in years. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I'm so sorry you had to find out like that." I nodded, too choked up to answer. She led me inside, and everything smelled like cinnamon and old memories. The living room hadn't changed in decades. The same crocheted blankets, the same lamp with a leaning shade. But now it felt different. Like it belonged to me somehow. On the coffee table sat a small wooden box. She opened it slowly as if it were precious. Inside were photos, stacked carefully. Some firefighter badges. A folded flag. "Your father earned these," she said. "He saved 18 people during his career. He used to say being a firefighter wasn't a job. It was a calling. When you joined the department, I knew. I knew he was still with you somehow." She handed me a photograph. It was of a young man in a firefighter uniform, holding a baby. His face was kind, strong. Proud. "That's Michael," she said. "Your father." The room blurred around me. I had never seen him before, but I knew him. I looked at him the way a child looks in a mirror for the first time and finally sees their own face clearly. I saw myself in his eyes, his jaw, the way he held me like I was everything that mattered. That picture did something no DNA test or family dinner ever could. It made me feel real. My voice trembled. Why didn't they tell me? Martha sat down beside me. They didn't want to remember what they lost. Lisa was Michael's brother's wife. After both men died, Michael in the fire, Frank in the accident the next year, she remarried. The new Frank wanted a fresh start. He adopted Jake when they got married. But you reminded them of what came before. So they just pushed that part away. But I always knew, she continued, I couldn't let Michael's son vanish. So I stayed close as they'd let me. And I waited for the day you'd come to me. She pulled out a faded envelope marked for Daniel, when he's ready. It was my father's handwriting. I opened it slowly, hands shaking, heart open. My son Daniel. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay long enough to raise you, and I'm so sorry for that. But I need you to know something no one can ever take away. You were wanted. You were loved. You are brave. I saw it in you from your first day. If anyone ever makes you feel small, it's because they don't understand how big your heart is. Don't let them dim your light. You are my son, and I am with you. Always. Dad. Tears spilled freely, not from sadness, but from recognition. For the first time in my life, I wasn't questioning if I mattered. I knew I did. And I knew who I was. I wasn't the extra son. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't the boy who had to earn his place. I was Michael Lambert's son. Loved. Protected. Chosen. I looked at Grandma Martha and smiled through tears. I want to know everything. She smiled back. Then let's begin. I stayed at Grandma Martha's that night. We talked until nearly dawn. She showed me more photos, more letters, pieces of a life I'd been living on the edge of without knowing. I learned that my father had been a station captain, that he loved classical music and played guitar, that he used to read me stories every night, doing all the different voices, that he called me Danny Boy and sang it as a lullaby. Every story I heard felt like oxygen after years of not being able to breathe deeply. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going back to that house. Not to Lisa's thin smiles or Frank's polite distance. Not to Jake's mockery. Not to that dining room table where love came with conditions. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done waiting for them to change. Done trying to fit into a space that was never built for me. Instead, I chose myself. A few weeks later, I filed paperwork to legally change my name. Daniel Michael Lambert. The first time I said it aloud at the courthouse, I felt something settle inside me, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. My real name. My father's name. My truth. I moved into Martha's spare room temporarily. The walls are covered with photos of my father with his firefighter crew. His old helmet sits on a shelf. I've started learning guitar, simple songs that feel familiar somehow. Music feels like a language we share across time. Through it all, I kept working. Firefighting doesn't stop even when your world changes. But I work differently now. I smile more. I listen better. I started mentoring new recruits. I carry a picture of Michael in my helmet. Not because I need others to see it, but because I finally want to see him with me. I don't talk to Lisa or Frank anymore. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Jake sent a few messages. One said, "I didn't know it would hurt you like that." I never responded. Letting them back in would be like handing someone a match after I've rebuilt my house. I'm done being burned for the comfort of others. What I've learned is this: family isn't something you're born into. It's something you build. It's who shows up when everything falls apart. It's who tells the truth when it's hard. It's who leaves the light on and waits for you, even when everyone else has forgotten you exist. I thought I was nobody for so long, but I was somebody's son. I was loved by a father who never got to see me grow up but gave me everything he could while he was here. I was protected by a grandmother who waited decades to give me back my own story. And I finally learned how to love myself with that same courage and strength. So here's what I tell anyone who's ever felt like an outsider in their own family: you are not the problem. You are not less because they failed to see your worth. You are not defined by those who couldn't love you right. You are allowed to walk away. And when you do, when you finally choose truth over pretending and real love over going through the motions, you don't lose a family. You find your own. I never expected my career at Meridian Partners would culminate in being locked out of my office at 8:30 on a Monday morning. My belongings packed in a cardboard box by strangers. But as Director Alexandra Reynolds stood in the doorway, her practiced sympathy not quite reaching her eyes, I realized this wasn't just a routine corporate restructuring. This was calculated elimination. My name is Mira Kapoor, and this is how I transformed a devastating career setback into the most strategic business victory of my life. That crisp autumn morning had started like any other. I arrived at Meridian's gleaming headquarters at 7:15, as I had for the past 7 years. I greeted Hector at the security desk, picked up my usual latte from the lobby cafe, and headed to the 32nd floor where I served as Director of Acquisitions. The first sign something was amiss came when my keycard failed to unlock my office door. Before I could try again, Alexandra appeared at my elbow. "Mira, I was hoping to catch you," she said softly, glancing at the junior HR representative hovering nervously behind her. "Let's talk in the conference room." The conference room, not her office. Never a good sign in corporate politics. "What's going on, Alex?" I asked, attempting to keep my voice level as we entered the empty glass-walled room. 7 years of friendship, or what passed for friendship in investment banking, should have warranted some transparency. "I'm sorry to inform you that your position has been eliminated, effective immediately," she recited, sliding a manila folder across the table. "The board has decided to restructure the acquisitions team. Your severance details are all here." Restructure. I repeated, my mind racing to piece together what was happening. "The Westbrook deal closes in 3 days. I've been working on it for 14 months. Alexandra smiled thinly. "The board feels that fresh leadership would benefit the final negotiations. Daniel Cooper will be taking over as Director of Acquisitions and handling the Westbrook closing." Daniel Cooper, of course. Alexandra's former Harvard classmate who joined Meridian just 11 months ago. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "This is about Westbrook's pharmaceutical division, isn't it?" I said, the realization dawning. "You're cutting me out because I know the true valuation." Alexandra's smile disappeared. "This is a standard corporate restructuring, Mira. Nothing personal. Security has packed your personal items. Hector will escort you out. As I walked through the office holding my cardboard box, colleagues averted their eyes. People I'd mentored, collaborated with, celebrated successes alongside, all suddenly fascinated by their computer screens. Only my assistant Zoe caught my eye, her expression a mixture of shock and distress. I gave her a slight nod, hoping she understood what it meant. We'll talk later. In the elevator, Hector shifted uncomfortably. This ain't right, Miss Kapoor, he muttered. After everything you've done for this company. Thank you, Hector, I replied, oddly calm considering my career had just imploded. Sometimes the game changes when you least expect it. Outside, standing on the sidewalk with my sad box of desk plants and family photos, I should have felt devastated. Instead, a strange clarity washed over me. This wasn't just office politics. This was about the Westbrook Pharmaceuticals acquisition. The $2.7 billion deal that would be the crown jewel of Meridian's portfolio. And more importantly, the deal where I discovered something no one else knew. 3 hours later, I sat in my apartment surrounded by spreadsheets and notes I'd meticulously backed up over the past few months. Another lesson from 15 years in corporate finance: always keep receipts. As I reviewed the Westbrook due diligence documents, my suspicions crystallized into certainty. Westbrook's experimental drug division wasn't worth the $950 million Meridian was preparing to pay. Based on my research, including confidential FDA filing timelines I'd uncovered, it was worth closer to $1.8 billion. Nearly double. Someone was orchestrating a deliberate undervaluation. And now that I'd been removed from the equation, there was nothing stopping them from acquiring Westbrook's most valuable asset at a fraction of its worth. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. They're announcing your departure as pursuing other opportunities. Cooper already moved into your office. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning about Westbrook. They were moving fast, which meant I needed to move faster. I reached for my phone again, scrolling to a contact I hadn't used in almost 2 years. Eliza Westbrook, CFO of Westbrook Pharmaceuticals and granddaughter of the founder. We developed a rapport during initial negotiations, bonding over being women in male-dominated industries. Before I could reconsider, I pressed call. Mira Kapoor, her crisp voice answered. Interesting timing. I just heard you're no longer with Meridian. News travels fast, I replied. Eliza, we need to talk. Not about the acquisition directly, but about some irregularities I've discovered. Are you free for dinner tonight? A pause. The River Cafe, 8 p.m. Come alone. The River Cafe was deliberately public, a signal she wasn't looking for backroom dealings. As I prepared for our meeting, another text from Zoe arrived. Cooper requesting all your Westbrook files. Something about inconsistencies in the pharmaceutical valuation. Board seems concerned. So they were scrambling, realizing perhaps that I hadn't left all my insights neatly documented for them to use. Good. Eliza Westbrook was already seated when I arrived, a glass of wine in hand and an inscrutable expression on her face. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd never needed to prove her right to be in the room. I have exactly 1 hour, she said as I sat down. Explain these irregularities you mentioned. Meridian is significantly undervaluing your pharmaceutical division. I stated plainly, based on my analysis of your pipeline, particularly the Phase A results for WB427, you're looking at a valuation approximately 90% higher than what's being discussed. Her expression didn't change, but I noticed her fingers tighten slightly around her wine glass. That's a serious claim, Mira, especially coming from someone who was just let go from the acquiring company. I was let go because I discovered the discrepancy, I countered, sliding a folder across the table. These are copies of my personal analysis. Page 4 shows the comparative valuation based on similar acquisitions in the sector. Page 7 details the projected revenue streams once WB427 receives FDA approval, which my research suggests is highly likely. Eliza flipped through the documents, her practiced neutral expression finally giving way to a frown. These projections are significantly different from what we've been shown. I imagine they are, I replied. The question is, who benefits from Westbrook accepting less than fair market value for its crown jewel? She closed the folder, studying me with new intensity. What exactly are you proposing, Mira? Nothing unethical. I'm simply providing information that allows Westbrook to make fully informed decisions. What you do with that information is entirely your choice. And what do you get out of this information sharing? I smiled. Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing fair valuations in the marketplace. As I left the restaurant an hour later, I knew I'd set something significant in motion. Eliza's parting words confirmed it. The board meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll be in touch. I slept surprisingly well that night for someone who just derailed her career. By morning, my strategy was clear. This wasn't just about exposing undervaluation. It was about positioning myself for what would come next. At precisely 10:17 a.m., my phone rang. Eliza's voice was clipped and professional. Our board has voted to pause all acquisition discussions with Meridian Partners, effective immediately. We've cited material concerns about valuation methodology in our formal communication. I see, I replied, keeping my tone neutral despite the surge of vindication. And may I ask what your next steps will be? That depends, he said. The board is interested in bringing in an independent advisor to reassess the pharmaceutical division's valuation. Someone with sector expertise and a reputation for integrity. I suggested you might be available. And there it was, the opportunity I hadn't dared articulate even to myself. I would certainly be interested in discussing that possibility, I said carefully. Good, my office, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Come prepared to present your methodology to the executive committee. She paused. And Mira, this doesn't mean we're accepting your analysis at face value. We'll be conducting our own independent verification. I wouldn't expect anything less. As I hung up, my laptop chimed with an email notification. A message from a former colleague at Meridian. All hell breaking loose here. Westbrook pulled out this morning. Board emergency session. Cooper looks like he's about to have an aneurysm. What did you do? I didn't reply. Some questions answer themselves in time. The chaos at Meridian escalated throughout the day. By evening, financial news outlets were reporting that the Westbrook acquisition had been suspended due to valuation disagreements. Meridian's stock dropped 4% on the news. More satisfyingly, analysts were raising questions about how such an established firm could have so catastrophically misvalued a major acquisition target. At 9 p.m., my doorbell rang. Alexandra Reynolds stood in my hallway, looking considerably less polished than she had the previous morning. May I come in? She asked, her usual confidence notably absent. I stepped aside, gesturing her toward my living room. She declined my offer of coffee or wine. The board sent me, she said without preamble. Westbrook is claiming we deliberately undervalued their pharmaceutical division. They're threatening to file SEC complaints alleging market manipulation. That sounds serious, I replied, keeping my expression neutral. They've hired an independent advisor to conduct a new valuation. She continued, watching me closely. Rumor says it's you. I didn't confirm or deny. What does this have to do with me, Alexandra? I was terminated, remember? Standard corporate restructuring. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. The board believes there may have been hasty judgment in your termination. They're prepared to offer you your position back, with a substantial compensation adjustment. To clean up Daniel Cooper's mess. Daniel has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. I let the silence stretch between us, enjoying the role reversal more than I probably should have. I appreciate the offer, I finally said, but I've already accepted another professional opportunity. With Westbrook? She asked sharply. As I said, I've accepted another opportunity. Now, unless there's something else, I have an early morning tomorrow. After she left, I allowed myself a moment of pure satisfaction. Not vindication. That was too small a word for what I was feeling. This was the recognition of having played a longer, smarter game than those who'd underestimated me. My meeting with Westbrook's executive committee the next day exceeded all expectations. My detailed presentation on the pharmaceutical division's valuation, particularly around their groundbreaking immunotherapy pipeline, was met with engaged questions and thoughtful discussion. By the end, I've been offered not just the independent advisor role but a 6-month contract as special advisor on corporate strategy, a position created specifically for me. 3 months later, Westbrook announced it was pursuing strategic alternatives for its pharmaceutical division. My valuation, $1.79 billion, was cited in their official materials. Major pharmaceutical companies launched a bidding war that eventually reached $2.1 billion. Meridian Partners wasn't among the bidders. Their reputation had taken a significant hit from the failed acquisition attempt, with several key clients quietly moving their business elsewhere. Daniel Cooper had resigned to pursue other opportunities. Alexandra Reynolds had been reassigned to a smaller division. As for me, when my contract with Westbrook concluded, I had multiple offers to consider, including one to lead my own acquisition advisory firm backed by a consortium of investors impressed by my work. I named it Kapoor Partners with a simple mission statement: integrity in valuation, transparency in transaction. Our first client, a pharmaceutical company looking to ensure fair market value in their upcoming acquisitions. Sometimes I think about that Monday morning when I stood on the sidewalk with my cardboard box, seemingly defeated. What Alexandra and Meridian never understood was that my value wasn't in my title or office. It was in my knowledge, my integrity, and my willingness to stand by my analysis even when it was inconvenient. In business, as in life, your reputation is built on substance, not appearances. Meridian sought quick profits through undervaluation. I saw accuracy and fair dealing. In the end, the market rewards the latter far more handsomely than the former. When young professionals ask me about the secret to my success, I tell them the truth. Your greatest professional triumph may arrive disguised as your worst career disaster. The key is recognizing the opportunity hidden within the crisis and having the courage to pursue it when others expect you to retreat. That and always keep backup copies of your work.